Books, everyone loves books. Hey, hi, how are you guys? I'm doing well, thank you. It's been a while since I made a video, it's been a while since I've talked to you guys, and it's also been a very long time since I've talked about books. I think the last time I talked about a book was for my books I'm going to read this year. So, how am I going with that? How is my schedule? Not too great, to be honest. I am not reading up to the amount that I want, and most of the books that I said that I was going to read, I have shelved for later. I might still read them, I hope I still read them, but other books have come along that I've grabbed and said, ooh, I want to read that instead. So, a few of the books that I'm going to talk about today, because today I'm going to go through all the books that I have read this year so far. Some of those books are ones that I put on my list of books that I want to read. Others are randoms. They're ones that I've just gone, ooh, that looks good, and I have grabbed them. So, without further ado, let's dive right into it. Alright, so up first we have The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan. Now, this is the second book in the very long, very epic Wheel of Time fantasy series, which is pretty much as high fantasy as you can get. I'm assuming there are dragons in here, but there are knights, there are epic magic systems that sprawl across an entire continent. It's a very large book. It's big. And I did do a review of The Great Hunt. I will put the review up just here, so make sure you go and watch that if you want more details. It was a great sequel to The Eye of the World. Not my favourite. I did prefer The Eye of the World overall. It had some slow bits for me, but I ultimately did enjoy it, and I am excited to get to The Dragon Reborn, which is the third book. The next book we're going to talk about is a Doctor Who book, and that is The Legends of Isildur. Now, this book is written by 4 different authors because it is 4 different short stories / novellas, but really it's a short story, just a long version. And they vary in quality. I really did not enjoy the first short story. I felt it was quite clunky, and it was intentionally trying to have very Arabian Nights kind of vibes to it, but I did not really enjoy it that much. And if you do pick up the book and you're not liking it, I would say just skip it, go to the second one or the third one. The second one is still not the best. It's not the best, but it's a massive improvement over the first one. I was enjoying myself, put it that way. The third one was really, really good. I felt the third one was probably my favourite. It ties into Doctor Who really well. It's at an interesting period, and it really gets into Isildur's mind of who she is. And the fourth one just does more of that and is built on the third one, but is different. It's more dramatic in its own way, but it's a little less, well, shall we say, dark than the third story. Overall, the entire thing I'll probably give about 3 stars. One of them was basically 4.5, and one of them was 1 to 2 stars. I'll give it 2. I'll give it 2 stars. Moving on. The next book we have to talk about is one that I'm going to say did changed my life. Now, I know everyone says, oh, wow, that's crazy. I know YouTubers just say that all the time. This book changed my life, this book changed my life. And I don't mean this made me go, like, completely change my personality or anything like that, because it didn't. But it was a book that made me reflect a lot and taught me so much. This book is by Barry Jones, who is a former Australian politician and lots of other stuff. He's a very clever man. And he's 90 something, I think now, or 80. Either way, he's not young. And this book is about him reflecting on his past a bit, on his first book that he published called Sleeper's Wake, which is very, very important, apparently, because I haven't read it, but he talks about it in here, and that's what he says. But it is his book, but I'm pretty sure that Sleeper's Wake is widely well known and beloved by many. And this book is similar, but it's on contemporary issues. It's on the issues Australia is facing today, and his take on what they are, how they've come about, and what we need to do to fix them. Really, it's him handing over the torch to the next generation, to us, and saying, here you go, guys. Good luck. But no, I did really enjoy this book. and it was incredibly insightful. It has a lot about climate change and the very polarized political environment now. We're not as bad as the US, but we are getting closer. And this book is all about that. And I thoroughly recommend it if you're into that kind of thing. Moving on. The next book that I read is Stormfront, the first book in the Dresden Files series by Jim Butcher. This was a really good book. I did really enjoy it. It was very light. It wasn't too serious. It was basically a detective story mixed with fantasy. It was kind of like, I've heard it be compared to Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Sherlock, but with more magic. And it's basically about a detective with an interesting past solving a big crime, well, different crimes, but of course they're going to intersect because this is this type of detective story. And it really doesn't shy from the tropes, but it uses all the right tropes well. It's not a very unpredictable story, but it is an incredibly satisfying, fun, and quick read that I do recommend, and I've been told that the Dresden Files does evolve into something much larger and more epic, which, hey, I'm always a fan of more epicness, so I cannot wait to read the rest of the series. It was a fun, enjoyable, very well paced first book in a series. Alright, so next we have The Two Towers. Yes, I revealed to you guys in my TBR video that I had not read all the Lord of the Rings books. I read The Hobbit, of course, and I read The Fellowship of the Ring, but I had not read The Two Towers or Return of the King. Well, I am rectifying that, because I did read The Two Towers. I'm not gonna lie, some bits with Gimli, Legolas, and Aragorn did lag quite a bit. It felt slow. I didn't love Helm's Deep that much. It's probably blasphemous to say that, but I just wasn't loving it. I did really love the Ent bits. They were beautiful. The Ent song, the story with the Ent wives, that really hit right there. That was quite good. I really liked that. And some of the stuff in Rohan was cool, but I didn't love the book, like really love it, until the second half, book, I want to say 4, because it's split into 2 books each, and that was when Frodo and Sam came into play, and Gollum came, Smeagol came, because the way Tolkien then wrote the story was much more subdued. It was less grand and like epic in battles, but more just focusing on the characters. I'm a very character-driven reader, and so that really spoke to me quite well. I really enjoyed Sam especially, but of course you would. But Frodo as well. Frodo, in my opinion, is more likable in the books than he is in the films. I still like him in the films, but he kind of annoys me. Books, because you can get into his head more, I do see where he's coming from. Ultimately, yeah, good book. Good book, can't wait to read Return of the King. Next we have The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I read this for several reasons, and ultimately it's basically, you know, the classic that's on this list. You try to add a classic on every list, and this is the classic for today. It's quite good. It's really short. It's only about 150 pages, and I did watch the Baz Luhrmann movie afterwards, by the way, but I read it first. I didn't want it to get tarnished. Although the movie is quite good. I did enjoy the movie, but we're not talking about the movie today. We're talking about the book, and the book was really enjoyable. You really got the sense of contrasting this very high society with, well, noble, rich society with the poor people in the Ash area. Nick is a fun character. He seems to be an unreliable narrator. He's interesting to read. None of the characters are good people, really. I mean, except for Gatsby, but still, Gatsby has his moments, and it was just a good story, and I particularly like the ending. Everyone knows about The Great Gatsby. If you haven't read it, you probably should. It's really quick and easy, and it's got great characters that, while I don't like any of them, I do understand where they're all coming from, and that's really impressive. F. Scott Fitzgerald, he wrote a great book. Next, we're going to look at another political book, because I do have 2 political books on here, and this one is similar to What Is to Be Done, but this one is called The Case for Courage. And it is by former Prime Minister of Australia, Kevin Rudd. And Rudd writes about all the issues he thinks Australia will have to deal with in the near future or else, well, chaos will ensue. Maybe not chaos, but it's issues we have to address. Of course, climate change comes into it. The Murdoch media, he talks about that as well. What your opinions are, Rudd has very strong views. And you don't have to agree with him when you read it, but he does bring a perspective that is different to a lot of others. And it's a perspective that I do tend to agree with a lot of the time. So I did really enjoy reading this book, seeing what he thought, and it was great to look at the book and reflect on that and just think about the big issues, climate change, or all of that sort of stuff. And I did really enjoy it. As a book, I preferred What Is to Be Done, but I still really liked The Case for Courage. And again, if you're into that same type of political stuff, or you just want to be informed about what the big shots are saying about Australia and going into its future through the 21st century, I would recommend checking out The Case for Courage and What Is to Be Done. They're both marvellous, marvellous books. Okay, let's continue on with Shadows of Self. Oh, you always need a Brando Sando on one of these lists. And so I have been reading The Mistborn Second Era. Now I'm happy to say I will actually do a video on all the Era 2 books once I read them, talking about what I felt about them. Shadows of Self right here, really good. Really, really good. Not Stormlight good, or Mistborn Era 1 good, but still really, really enjoyable. I particularly liked, go figure, the political intrigue in it. I really enjoyed that. I love seeing the workers try to come together to demand for more rights. I felt like that just everything came together really nicely. It was a much more consistent book than the first one. A lot more happened than the first one. I enjoyed the characters more. Wayne didn't annoy me nearly as much. Yeah, it was very promising, and I am very excited to read Bands of Mourning, which is the third book, because this one, yes, Anderson, you managed to redeem a series that I thought was probably your worst. And, I don't know, this is really good. This is, for me, on par with Elantris and Warbreaker. It was a solid book. Oh, look at that. Actually, I'm done. Those are all the books that I've read, all the 8 books, not 9, because there is a 9th one, but that is going to come in its own video soon, and I technically read it at the beginning of April, so it doesn't fit in this list. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that I've given you some ideas for books you might want to read, whether it's The Wheel of Time, whether it's Shadows of Self, or The Case for Courage, or any of those books, especially What Is to Be Done. What Is to Be Done is marvellous, but I hope I've given you I hope that I've given you some options for books that you might want to read in the future. That being said, my name is Jasper, this has been Legends of Jasper, and I hope to see you all later. Make sure you subscribe and click that bell and like the video and all that. Do it for me, will you? Thanks for watching.